The Software Leaders Uncensored podcast, where tech leaders grow beyond the code.
Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, 25 years serial tech entrepreneur, author, and CEO of Sonatify Technology. Man, I can't talk today. I am joined today by Russ Felker, CTO of Trinity out of the Chicagoland area in Illinois. Russ is a three-time CTO. He has been a founder, a board member, an M&A advisor. Really excited to have you on the show today, Russ.
So thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
You bet.
You mentioned you said founder and all that. That's kind of how I came up with all that. Going through startups. When I first left college, that's what I did, is just kind of serial startup, serial entrepreneur, either the first or a founder, and never really left that. I'm still on the board of a couple of those, but because I can't fully step away from it. I think, once you get it in your system, you
that's a good thing, and it forces you to think in a different way. And my next book that's being published next month, the premise of it is fail hard, win big. And I've had 30 ventures, 20 have been failures and 10 have been successful. And kind of the theme of all my ventures is I always build custom software to make sure operations are smooth, to improve client experiences. And so tell us about the journey of your career, Russ, and what led you to where you are today.
Like I said, started off in really various industries. So always technology, never, technology in this kind of very narrow defined path. So I've worked in healthcare, in municipal government, in hair color. That's one usually throws people. But always technology.
Hey, you need tech everywhere. I'm with you.
I tell people all the time, these are frosted tips. I didn't go gray. This is all from my haircut anyway. But it's interesting because I think that perspective, a breadth of industry, lets you also understand the similarities and challenges that, regardless of the industry, you face with technology.
Yes.
Over the last number of years, I've focused more narrowly from an industry perspective, really focused on transportation and logistics. I do feel like there's just a lot of opportunity there for technology to have a major impact. I also kind of look at it as one of those industries that hasn't really had a big shakeup in a number of decades, I'll say, at this point. Not huge. And so it's interesting because I think there's almost this feeling it's ripe for disruption. And that's exciting. It's scary, but it's exciting at the same time. And so, being in this industry now for the last about 7 years has given me a nice perspective there. And just being able to apply all the learnings from previous, because it's been 35 years of tech about. I've been doing this, been a little while. And I think that really has helped me to come at this with, but we did this over in this industry and this could apply here. And I think that can be useful.
My company has we work with quite a few logistics companies, and there are so much room for improvement of legacy processes, of inefficiencies. I mean, it's a great example of where the right tech, where the right software can make these tweaks that could very much lead to a dramatically increased profitability, client satisfaction.
Yeah, I think the struggle, and it's not a struggle, but there's this kind of push and pull of it, of the incremental improvement that you can do through tech. And there's many industries that have lots of opportunities to do those. I think transportation is a classic example of one of those types of industries. But balancing that with trying to figure out where to go next in a larger sense and what technology can do to help move you there. And there have been some runs at it. It's not like people haven't tried it.
Right.
Uber Freight still exists, at least in name, maybe some slight issues with profitability there. They made a run at it. They're like, hey, we're going to take this, we're going to make it all digital. Another one that did that was Convoy, who is no longer with us as a company today. But it was interesting because it was, hey, we're going to take the existing model and we're just going to make it fully digital.
Okay.
And, well, that didn't work because you didn't really change anything. All the same issues were there, the same exception paths and patterns. And and things that can happen within this physical move that you're really just a digital twin of in brokerage and transportation, because there's a physical truck that picks up a physical thing and has to drive with all these other people on a road to another place and then get it off successfully, and all that physical stuff has a lot of exceptions that are associated with it. And I don't know that anyone's figured out the pattern yet, or can technology create not just a digitization of an existing business model and create those, kind of, I'll call them incremental improvements to get to maybe some degree of increased profitability, sure, and increased efficiency, but is there a chain that could actually be implemented?
So Russ, tell us about Trinity Logistics and what you guys do and what makes your company different.
Sure. So Trinity Logistics is a asset light in that we do not have trucks, we don't have warehouses, we don't have anything physical. We are a true digital twin of the supply chain, and that we work with shippers, we work with carriers, we match them up. I like to call us the eHarmony of shipping.
Okay. I like that, the eHarmony of shipping.
Yeah. Well, find you your perfect match. Tell us all about you. So we work with shippers to help them get their stuff moved. I mean, that's the bottom line. So it's mainly over-the-road trucking. That's what we do primarily, whether that's less than truckload or full truckload, where you get the whole truck, or you get a part of the truck, whether it's drayage, whether it's, just how are we helping these companies to get the thing they have where it needs to go.
Gotcha.
And make the connections to make that happen.
Now, how did you end up as CTO at Trinity Logistics?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was this contest I entered. No, there was no contest. That was not how this worked. So I was actually with a company previously, Global Trans, which is another large third-party logistics firm. They actually merged with another company, Worldwide Express. They're a big kind of conglomerate now of those two companies, and so weird. They were like, yeah, I don't know that we need two CTOs here. I was like, oh, okay. So in drawing the short straw, I made the move to Trinity, which has been great. I mean, Trinity is very focused on the user experience and the customer experience, and all of our technology implementations have to have that lens that we put it through. And that's always a great thing, because I think sometimes technology gets implemented purely for efficiency without the thought of the user or customer experience and what changes are being made to that to get the efficiency. The ROI is great, but that's a very quantitative measure. You have to take the qualitative piece too. Like,
well,
can I make
and
the
that's
job
often,
like 8 times harder?
That's often what
cheaper.
Makes the CTO role so challenging is that you have non-technical stakeholders, whether it's other C-suite, investors, board members. You have to implement these things, and you also need to be able to quantitatively prove what your team is doing. Now, and the CTO job has been a volatile place the last couple of years. And I always like to ask, so you were in this same industry, your company merged, went through changes. So how did you find Trinity, or how did they find you? I always like to give other CTOs tips when they're looking for new opportunities.
So when I was hired at Global Trans, the then CEO of Global Trans hired me, and I reported to her. She ended up leaving and going to another company before I left Global Trans, and it was actually through her.
Okay.
So I feel like it's a very classic example of why you stay in touch with people and why you continue to do the work part of your network, and really, just make sure you maintain that. Because that is so often how you hear about jobs. It's not that you hear about it through a posting, or that your retained recruiter reaches out to you specifically about this job. It's because the president of Trinity was talking to the former CEO of Global Trans, and they knew each other and had a relationship. And she's like, hey, you should talk to, and there you go.
So your network went into play there. I don't know many CTOs who have gotten the job by clicking on a job post.
Right.
And it's a frustrating experience because so you're utilizing your network was key for you, which is fantastic.
It was. And I think people, you get into a job, you get in there a couple years, 3 years, something like that. Don't let the network go. Keep active. in your network, whether that's a local network, whether it's that more global network, whatever it is that you have, use LinkedIn. You go to events where you know the people that you want to network with are going to be. Do those things. It's important. And it's been critical because now the former CEO of Goldtrans is CEO of another company focused in freight that provides a solution. And now it's one we're looking at because, there's some, and they have a good solution, but it's also the relationship that's there.
Yeah.
Knowing that I know this person and I know this person wouldn't get involved with something that's not good.
I love it. So tell us about some of the current projects you're working on, Russ.
Absolutely. As everyone is, it's all about, but can't generative AI do that? That seems to be the theme of discussions.
No doubt. No doubt. And I know board members and non-technical execs constantly want CTOs to quantify how they're using AI and
yeah. It's so we do actually have generative AI projects, although I don't know if they're our largest projects really, but they're there. I mean, our biggest project right now is we're actually implementing for the first time in the history of the company a third-party CRM.
Okay.
That it's always been kind of a custom thing or maybe like a little smaller thing. And now we're bringing in a big, kind of one of the big third-party CRM players and going to be implementing that. So that's huge change, obviously, for our sales team and even for our operations teams to an extent. So a lot of change management, a lot of integrations that when you got a custom CRM and it's basically in the exact same code base as your operational system, I don't really have to worry about integrations all that much because it's all right there. And now we've got to really focus on that maturation of integration patterns and security patterns and all of the different things that go along with really having two more behemoth systems talking to each other on a constant basis. And that's so that we're kind of in the midst of that planning and that, getting ready for execution here as we move into the summer.
Gotcha.
And really start driving towards that. So that's a huge project. I'm sure it's one that many other CTOs or companies in general have gone through, but it's challenging because
it's a huge overhaul. And most importantly, to evolve to making full use of AI and its forward momentum. It kind of all starts with having the right data platform that all your systems are feeding into, making sure there's proper governance over that data so that it can be used in a manner to truly have a larger impact.
Yeah, and that's another thing. I mean, we've been working for the last couple years really to get that kind of data warehouse implemented and in place and get it to a state where we can start really just dumping everything into it. Now what we've been going down the path of is, okay, is the industry, and when it comes to data, access, visualization, things like that, has anybody matured their product enough that you can provide what we call, affectionately, a data concierge to our executive team? Because I think, everybody's familiar with the old pattern of data access, which is, hey, I as executive have this question I need to answer. Let me put a request in to our an analytics team, BI team, whatever you happen to call it. They'll get the request and go, great, thank you so much for the request. I'm going to set up time to talk with you about this so I know what the heck you're talking about. Then that, a couple days go by, you get that meeting, they go, oh, now I understand kind of what you're talking about. Hold on, let me put something together for you.
Let me put a spreadsheet together and
later,
import all the data.
Days, a week go by. Is this what you were talking about? Well, yes and no, yeah, kind of. What about this and this and this? Oh, okay, hold on, let me go back. And now you needed to answer a question. Usually, you needed to answer a question because a specific business problem came up.
Mm-hmm.
It may be with a customer, maybe with a team member. It could be with a trading partner. Whatever it is, this question came up. But your answer is a good 30 days out. Business doesn't move that slowly anymore. I mean, it's not like we're writing letters to each other and putting them in the mail and everything moves faster and faster and faster. And that pace of business hasn't decreased in the last 5 or 10 years. It's increased.
Short of having the perfect data warehouse, data platform, how do you accomplish that in the short term?
In the short term, it's about what we've been trying to do is really look for a tool that can bridge the gap between someone who just needs to ask a question and how we relate that question to the data. And this is where generative AI and LLMs can really come into play.
Mm-hmm.
The key is that context layer of I'm going to ask this question as a person who knows the business really well to an LLM that's been generically trained on the English language, but doesn't really know what you're asking. So you got to create that context. And
right.
finding a tool set that allows you to create and then maintain that context has been the gap so far. Although I think there's opportunities to do that. But once you get the context layer, the rest of it's there. That's already been tried and tested and validated. And having a generative AI system create a visualization is pretty straightforward because it's very systematic. It's knowing that the right data is there and that the question was answered appropriately that's been the trick.
So Russ, tell us about your engineering team. How many engineers do you have? Where are they located? Are you in person, hybrid, remote?
So this is the Chicago office for Trinity, which is my basement.
Okay.
Our main office is actually in Delaware, physically in Delaware, not a P.O. box like many other companies.
My company may be a Delaware C Corp.
It may be a Delaware company, but I'm going to guess you don't go to Delaware as regularly as I go to Delaware. But we're spread pretty remote across mainly Midwest and East Coast. We do have probably half of our 35-person team is actually physically in Delaware, but maybe a little bit less than half now. And then the rest are kind of spread out. Myself, my manager of data services is here. We're both here in Chicago. We're the only two here in Chicago. So we trade off. Her office is, the official office one day and mine's the next. But then we've got people kind of all over the place. We moved to a remote for a few of our areas. Obviously, everyone moved remote in 2020. But We've had to come back to the office for certain groups and roles where it made sense. And then we've had a larger amount of our teams remain remote where it made sense. Developers especially. I never saw any point in bringing developers back to the office, except for like point meetings or something.
The smarter, the better the developer. Last time I checked, they're really good at focusing on the problem at hand. And when they have to go in the office and they have to talk with people outside of the normal strategy meetings, it could be challenging.
Well, there's one accessory that all developers bring into any office situation, which are noise-canceling headphones.
That's right.
So they don't talk to anybody, even though they're sitting there with people. So it just doesn't make sense. But, like our support teams are on site, obviously, a lot more often. Desktop support, things like that. And then our product teams tend to be more in-person than project teams, just because, they're interacting more with different business units and things. So it just kind of depends on the role, but for the most part, we're still relatively remote.
What's your current or ideal tech stack?
Ideal tech stack? Well, I'm sure my engineers will cringe if they watch this when I say this, although they should not be surprised by this answer, having talked to me about it. My ideal tech stack is actually predominantly a low-code tool set that you work with to implement the business processes and different mini or micro systems almost that you need, and then use a kind of a back persistence layer to tie those things together and allow for information to flow between those mini or micro systems. I'm not a big fan of the big monolithic system that does everything and it's all contained. I think given the tool sets available these days, I have brought out systems into our environment, and we've used that to great success for a whole lot of different little functional pieces that prior to OutSystems we would have had to build with Pro Code or High Code. We don't have any other system. But when you just need to get something out there and get it done, and it's it's really simple, it uses existing data, something like that is great. We brought Workato in for integrations. That's been a huge win for our team in speed. Instead of writing bespoke PHP code to do data transformations and things like that, to put an iPaaS system in. So my ideal tech stack is, I'd say it's almost fragmented. I feel like you fragment the functions, you tie it together on the front end by putting basically almost like a container around these mini or micro apps to allow for access for people. And then you have that consistency on the persistence layer on the back end in that data warehouse to say, hey, great, we're going to stand up this little thing. It's going to generate this data. And that goes smack into the data warehouse. And anybody else that needs it, it's right there. Go get it anytime you need. It's no problem. And whether you buy the system or whether you build the system, and I do believe there's room for both. Shouldn't build everything. That borders on insane. And which is why we're moving to a not custom CRM, because we're not a CRM company. This is not what we innovate on a daily basis. So
now,
we want to partner with somebody who does.
With low code environments, I definitely agree they're very good for doing certain functionality quickly, can be done by a broader group of people. But how scalable do you think that is when the functions grow around what's built there?
That's going to be environment to environment. If you have an environment that, say you're in retail and Black Friday's coming every year, it shows up and your systems go freaking nuts from a scale perspective, maybe low code's not the best option. But if you got kind of steady, predictable scale, growth, but not crazy spiked volatile growth, it works just fine. And those systems improve over time, just like everything else. That you look at it as a third-party system that you buy to an extent, and those platforms improve over time. They get more scalable, they get more flexible, they get more things introduced into them. So I think if you're going through a rapid scaling, maybe not the best choice. If it's your core platform that you're doing, maybe not the best choice. But if you're standing up these little kind of micro apps that are just doing different things and solving these little problems, and you can do that in what amounts to a governed platform, I think you actually tend to stop the spread of shadow IT to an extent, and it scales enough that it's practical to use, I think, even in a medium-sized enterprise.
Good points. How about tell us, within your engineering teams, have you been able to incorporate AI to make your teams more productive?
Yes. I'm actually an avatar, Steve. No.
I thought so. I saw a glimpse.
It's the blinking thing. I haven't blinked the whole podcast. No, we started using and testing out over a year ago the IDE add-ins for code generation and things like that. Of course, back then, and even today to an extent, they're not very context aware. And it's getting better. It's improving all the time, though. And right now we have it to where our engineers don't write from a blank page. You always say, I got to do this thing. It's like this, generate my base code. And then you go from there.
And do you have a specific tool you have integrated, like Windsurf or Copilot?
We use JetBrains as our IDE. And so we've just taken the add-in from JetBrains. That is the LLM that they use, which is targeted at coding. And it works well. I think there's probably some more that work better out there, like a Hex or a Cursor, or maybe it's...
They're all changing so quickly that it's hard to say what's better and what's not.
Yeah, well, Google claims that their latest one's the best, so I guess we'll see.
And I think
it's
they said
pretty good.
If you don't agree with them, your company won't show up on Google searches.
I think that's how it works, right? I mean, so Google, as you watch this, you're awesome. We love you, man.
That's right. How have you been able to quantify to non-technical stakeholders at your company the use of AI?
Yep. What we've talked about is, you have, and we really harp on, I'll call it the ethical use of AI, or the maybe responsible is a better term to use. We want to use it where it creates improvement in our team members' experience, our customer experience, our carrier experience, things like that. But we don't want to just use it because it happens to be available in every product. It feels like now it's just available, but it's like any other type of automation. I mean, I don't even remember, it was probably, 15 years ago, RPA was really coming into its own. And, it's like RPA, everything could be RPA.
That was the buzzword.
That's some of the same things, almost in identical language, that you hear about agentic AI today.
Yes.
15 years ago, just take out agentic AI and plop in RPA in the same sentence with sentence. But when you implemented it, it was like, oh yeah, this is great, right up until it isn't. Because it's, it will do the same action in the face of overwhelming evidence that it should stop. So, And agentic AI has not exactly the same problem. It has some of those same problems, but it has new problems because it will go, oh, I couldn't do it that way. Well, I'll just do it this way. It's like, what? Hold on. That's bad. That's a bad way to do it. Don't do that. But it doesn't know. It has no code of ethics. It has no sense of responsibility for the customer. It doesn't have any feeling. It's a really, really cool autocomplete in some ways. And so if you're not being very targeted and very monitoring aware, I'll say, of your implementations of agentic AI or just generative AI in general, it can get you into more trouble than it's worth. There was a podcast I was listening to yesterday, actually, that was talking about, there's these letters that are coming out from these different CTOs and CEOs like Fiverr and Duolingo and groups like that, saying, it's changing the face of what we do. And I don't disagree with that. I think they may be rushing it a little bit as to what it's truly capable of, because I use those tools every day, and every day I see it do some weird stuff where it's kind of like, really? That's the direction you went? All right.
You definitely have to use it. It's got to be monitored, to say the least.
Yeah.
And it has to be guided. Well, let's say, Russ, that Gartner publishes a report that the best logistics transportation companies have integrated AI into 70+% of their processes. And your board comes to you and says, what are we doing? How do you respond to that?
So we track the tasks that we automate through AI, or at least we call it intelligent automation. Is the phrase that we use within. So it's not that AI is a way of doing intelligent automation. It's fine. It is a mechanism of doing it, but it's not the only mechanism. There's a lot of other ways to do intelligent automation. So we look at how many tasks do we automate through intelligent automation, and we just keep track of that as a, kind of in a general sense, as a percentage of our total tasks. And it's a high level measurement, but it works because it just gives somebody an idea of, well, X% of our rote tasks are automated. And the other thing we can say is this task, we have intentionally chosen not to automate, and here's why. And that, I think that goes a long way with boards and with, just in discussing that with even other business leaders that are your non-technical business leaders, because it's not just your board that brings this stuff in. It's everybody.
So, Russ, we're almost halfway through 2025 as a CTO. What are the biggest challenges you're facing now?
So, biggest challenges are, I think, a couple of things. So, one, the proliferation of AI and agentic AI, and that being embedded into tools. So, under my umbrella also lives security. So I take on a lot of the security functions and responsibilities as well that might traditionally live under a CIO role or a CISO role. Securing your enterprise when there are now all these new ways for data leakage, or even especially if you stand up one of these conversational AIs, or chat AIs publicly for attack vectors that you've now introduced into your environment, how do you protect against them? And how do you keep up with the just rapid change of the introduction of these tool sets into, kind of these existing properties that you've had in place for in some cases years. And now all of a sudden they're agentic AI, and all of a sudden they're generative AI, but they didn't give you any real way to secure that. They just gave it to you and said, here it is, here you go. So I think that's a huge concern that I have as you go through and do this. And in combination with that is the change in education. I think as technology leaders, we've been very good in a population sense about training our people on things like phishing attacks or smishing attacks, or these different ways that you could be socially
don't click on those stupid email attachments from somebody you don't know.
You shouldn't. And thanks for sending me that invoice over, Steve. I made sure I put my credentials in when I clicked. Don't worry, I re-signed in. But we've done a great job of that. But now we've got to start introducing this education, not on the dangers of AI, but how to use it effectively so that people get benefit from it. Because I don't think you're going to get necessarily all of the benefit from AI from a directed implementation. You're also going to get it from these piece uses and understanding what those are, and then training that out to larger audiences with the same role or the same function set as the person who kind of discovered the use within your company. And so harnessing that and getting a pattern down is challenging, because so often when people bring things, it's like, oh, can I do this? So many IT organizations are relegated to the, no, you cannot do that. And, we have to make a change. We have to be the, yes, and here's how you can do that. And here, let me help you do that. Let me be that partner for you to move forward in your use of this tool set and of this new available functionality.
And that right there kind of sums up the hardest part of being a CTO, making sure you're making everyone understand that and trying to align the expectations. Russ, thank you for getting uncensored with us today. You brought up some great points. Looking forward to how you continue to evolve the industry. Any final shout outs or advice for tech leaders you'd like to give?
Oh my gosh. I think I'd probably only reiterate things I've already said. So I will refrain from wasting any time on that.
Well, then you covered it all, and great points. Thank you, Russ. Appreciate you coming on. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. Stay bold, keep building out there. Thanks, everybody.